Hello everybody, welcome back to a new video. And I got a comment on one of the posts on one of my latest videos asking for basically a tutorial on kick and bass. And it's kind of hard to do that because normally my workflow for each project is kind of different in that regard. I have shown a couple of tricks in some other tutorials, but I kind of want to go through some of the things I usually do. So like the a bit of the standard things I normally do. But this often differs from project to project. But I hope that it still can be helpful. If you have any suggestions for a video you would like to see, please let me know and I'll hope I can make it. Okay, so I've set up this simple project here with 6 tracks in 2 groups. One is our kick group here above in the drums, and we have another group which is the bass down below here. I did do this fairly quickly and on headphones, so it doesn't sound like the best bass in the world, but I hope that once we start remaking this and doing this from scratch, which I will be doing later, we can kind of get through and get a bit better result. So first I'm gonna listen to it so you can kind of get familiar with it, and then I'll go over all of the elements, and then after that we'll make a new version of this. Okay, so that's pretty decent sound. It consists, as I said, of 2 main groups here. We have our kick and our bass, and the kick is normally I just use a sample for that. I don't really synthesize my kick because I'm not really getting any good results from that. But what I tend to do, and I've done here, is if I just turn this down, I have my, as you can see, my lower or my main kick, I have that low passed quite a bit actually, and then I remake the top kick from these 2 other layers, which include a top kick sample from the Cashmere pack, which is just really snappy, and then we also have a hi-hat here, which just adds a little bit more high-end to the whole thing. There's not really much to say about this kick. As I said, I normally don't synthesize it because I kind of don't like doing it that way, and this just gives me massively better results. If you wonder where this main kick is from, it's from a sample pack called, if I go down here, Ultimate Psytrance Sounds, which I believe is free, and that comes with around 45 kicks, or yeah, almost 50 kicks, and they're all pretty decent and use them often. And the other stuff is from the Cashmere pack, but this simple stuff, so you probably will find it anywhere. Then the bass also consists of 3 tracks. We have 2 bass lines, or 2 tracks for the main bass line, and then I have a stereo layer in this case, which takes up the 3rd track. And the difference between this one and this one is just the filtering or on the EQ. I tend to have this one, or the offbeat, be a bit more aggressive, therefore taking up more of the frequency spectrum, and I tend to have my the one which collides with the kick, I have that high pass and also a bit low pass, so it's a little bit less intense and kind of rolls better into the or sits better into the mix. And then the stereo layer here, which actually I can kind of show you what they sound like. So this is my main, and this is my main bass, and then we have a simple stereo layer, which just adds a bit of extra swing to the whole thing. Okay, so now that we know this, we can actually start working on that. So I'm gonna insert first of all an audio track here, and I'm gonna put this in here so I can oh, I'm gonna put it down there so I can remove this, and then I'm gonna make a MIDI track so I can remove this, and we can start from scratch. So now we have an empty project, and as I said, the kick is really nothing special. I just kind of choose one that I like. I really enjoy this number 7 here, so I'm gonna take this, and the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check the key, and maybe you can see with the EQ where the basically like the lowest point is, and in this case it's between F and E. I'd say it's probably, yeah, it's an F. So I'm gonna first of all turn up the low pass, which is always a good idea to do, just under the main sub area of the kick. Second thing I like to do is I like to make sure that it does not collide with our main bass, and I'm gonna do that by simply adding a fade like this and making sure that it's silent after the halfway point of the beat. That way we can have the sub bass from our bass there. And the bass is really where I like to start next. So I'm going to create a MIDI clip, and I have a preset which I normally use. For my bass line I have a user effect, and I have to go into here. I have this instrument rack with a simple serum bass, which I usually use just to get started, and then I edit it. But for now I'm gonna start from the beginning. So there are a few waveforms that you can actually use for bass. One of them is just this normal saw wave here. But what I always like to do is just go slightly back on the sub here, and I'll demonstrate why later, because we're actually going to filter this sub bass in a special way using a special plugin, and then it's just a matter of turning on the filter and modulating it. So I like to use the LFO because you can sync it to the time exactly, and then you can just draw in your shape of the filter. So let's say we want something like this, and if I play that, oh. You can kind of get an idea of the feeling of the bass. Now what you may notice is that every sound is slightly different. If you listen carefully, you can hear that the transients are not consistent, right? And in order to fix that, you put this random phase down, which basically determines the starting position. And if you put the random all the way down, you get this line, and that's where the sound is going to start playing from. So you can put it just before the click, and you get this nice defined high-end transient. And then what's also probably a good idea is to have a second envelope control the volume. So I'm going to turn this down, and my volume shape is going to be something like this, slight extra on the attack. And what I'm also going to do is I want to use the velocity here to control the volume. So I'm going to add that. And you can get much more advanced, like if you want the velocity to also control your filter cutoff, you can do that, and you can add all kinds of effects. But I normally don't use that. I normally just do that like behind here if I really want extra tonality to the bass. So for now this is gonna be good enough for me. And oh yeah, I did want to show you another trick. I saw a tutorial where instead of what I did here and turning down this this particular harmonic, which is the sub, you can actually make a waveform which looks like this, where you take the slope down and you put this at 6, and then you create something like this, which is basically an off-center saw wave. And if we look at this, you can see that this also has a lower sub and this has more high end because of the way the wave works. So if we actually take that and use that as our wave, you can hear, if I set it up correctly, you can hear that you have basically the same thing happening. Okay, so now that we have a basic sound, we can actually draw in the MIDI. And this is a bit tricky, so I'm gonna hold down the key and I'm gonna add 3 notes which are not touching each other, so there's a little gap there. And then what I usually do is I turn up the offbeat one, which is the second one, and I turn down the first one, so you get this nice wavy feeling, as it kind of, it's like a sidechain, but it's also, this one is louder than the one behind it, and you can always play, like if you don't really like that effect, you can turn this up, or you can turn it down for more extreme effect, but we'll go for this for now. It's just a nice trick to have your offbeat a bit more yeah, a bit more accentuated, I guess. Then I'm gonna add the trusty audio effect track I always use, which is the bass extra click. I've done a tutorial on this thing. Actually, I've done a normal one and a follow-up tutorial. This is using the follow-up one where I have the LFO tool, and I use that to create my dynamics. And if you want to see a tutorial on that, then you can go to my channel, or there will be a link in the description. And one of the problems we are having now is that there is sub bass in this area from the bass, but also, as you can see, from our kick. So we kind of need to, that's why I slice it up. You press Ctrl E and it will make a slice, and then you can duplicate the track and do something like this. And you have this one bass note playing here, and you can just simply add a high pass like so. Now there's always more that we can do. I tend to group these things together. Also, my kick is very loud in comparison with the other one, so I'm just gonna turn it down a bit. So we already have a bass line that kind of works, and it's kind of nice, but it's completely in the mono, which might not be something you want. And therefore what I tend to do is I just duplicate the track again. I have a few presets that I can use for this, but the main gist of it is that you make a stereo layer. And if I go to my stereo section under the Melda plugin, there is this stereo generator. If you don't have this plugin, I can also recommend the Polyverse Whiner, which is a free plugin. Does the job a little bit worse, in my opinion, than this one, because this creates a nicer sound, but it does add some more high end, as you can hear. I tend to turn it all the way up because I want this to be really stereo, and then I just filter out all those higher frequencies we don't want, and we check how it layers with the Now you hear that there is a really long tail to this stereo layer here, which is a bit of a problem, and we can fix that using our trusty LFO tool. So if I put this on 16th note and at scope, you can really see what is going on. You can see that this is a really long tail. And if I pull this down, you can hear now we have a bit of a stereo layer, but it's nothing crazy, and we don't have the long tail that goes throughout the whole note. We just have like the attack, a bit stereo, and then wherever there's sub bass, because you here you're gonna have all the frequencies of the bass because the filter is open, but then we're closing it, so here we only have the sub. So that means that also in the stereo layer we should only have sub bass. So yeah, now we have a simple kick and bass. I showed you that I also had two other layers in the on the kick track, which if you really want to, if you're saying, okay, my high end of the kick is a bit messy and I want to redo it, which in this case, yeah, it could use a bit better of a high end. Can also use a bit more of a click in the high middle area. Right, then you just use a low pass to get rid of the high end, and you add a new track and you find a nice top kick, which in this case I found in the kick section, and then it was one of these. Sometimes Ableton, yeah. Probably this one, yeah. You can really change the character at this point by using the transpose key. And also, of course, filtering out the lower frequencies might help. Okay, that sounds good. And now for our last track, I like to have a bit of a noise in there, because now it sounds really stale and almost too clicky. And to draw that out, what you can do is you can use a closed cymbal, like for example this one, and just have it really be the attack part of your kick, and just turn it down a lot, maybe even a bit more. Turn it down a bit on the EQ, and this just helps your kick sit in the mix a bit better. Usually when you have a lot of high end going on in the leads, then this helps making it sound better within the whole mix. The last thing I like to do to my bass, actually, as you can hear, the sub is a little bit underwhelmed, and as I said, we did turn down the sub, and the reason for that is I have this plugin here from the Plugin Alliance, which is this BX subfilter. You might have seen me use it. It's at least, I don't think I have shown how my preset is, but it's in there. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to reconstruct basically the low end. So if we now listen to it, you will hear that we have a ton of low end, and you can use this to kind of check where you want it to be. So I'm gonna sit around, it doesn't really matter if it's exactly on the key, but around where the key of your sub is, you should also have this tight punch. And then you can change the effect with this resonance, which extreme resonance is more and low resonance is slightly less. And you can also turn it down a bit. I like it really turned down because, again, we're only adding a little bit of sub and we don't want to overdo it. And altogether now it sounds somewhat like this. Might want to turn the stereo layer down a bit more, which I would say is a pretty decent kick and bass, at least on my headphones. Kind of depends on what system you're listening to this. Again, as I said, it's on my headphones for me, so it won't be perfect. But I hope you can use these tricks, and I hope they help you make better kick and bass. If you have any suggestions for other tutorial ideas or anything, please let them know in the comments. And I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.